2 of Love and Responsibility Philadelphia. How many of us were here last week? Let's get a show of hands. All right, you guys came back. You're the victorious ones, the ones who made it to week 2. Can we have a show of hands of who is your first week? All right, welcome. Welcome. We forgive you. We forgive you this once. Thank you everyone for coming out. A quick note, we have a gray Civic out front that needs to be moved unless Jesse found you. It's still, okay, there's a gray Civic out in front of the front doors that has been asked to be moved. So if that's you, you can sneak out the back so we don't shame you. But my name is Katie Payne, and on behalf of the Culture Project, I want to thank you for coming out and being a part of this amazing series, this exciting opportunity to dive into the teachings of John Paul II. And we just, again, want to give a quick thank you and shout out to the seminary for letting us use your space and partnering with us. Having our office here is like driving into Downton Abbey every day. It's a dream. And also to the Archdiocese for partnering up with us and helping make these events possible. It's just an amazing gift to be able to be here and to invite all of you to this gorgeous space. Also, a big thanks to Anthony's for the food. So if you ever need a lunch spot in Wynwood, go to Anthony's and get their pizza. Or Wayne. Thank you, David. Or Wayne.
Thank you, Dave, for photography.
Thank you, Dave, for photography. Thank you, everyone. All right, so for those of you who were not here last week, the vision of these 5 weeks is really to bring together our demographic, our young adult demographic in Philadelphia, and dive into the rich teachings of John Paul II, specifically his work, Love and Responsibility, and to not only just like learn and discuss, but to really have a chance to encounter each other, to build relationships, and to form a community built on like a rich, sound philosophy and the discovery of who we are and what we're made for. So this is really a unique and beautiful opportunity for people who didn't come last week or for people that can't come next week. Know that last week's whole evening is on our Facebook page on the Culture Project. We put it on Facebook Live tonight. I think we'll be on Facebook Live. I don't know, but I think it is. Yes? Yes, it is. So you can tell your mom and you can tell your friends that live in another state if you want them to have a chance to hear from our speakers. They can do so online, or you can catch up if you miss. But of course, we want you here in person. So tonight is really a chance for you to relax, have a drink, have a bite of food. We hope you meet someone new, make a new friend, build relationships, and form a culture. Important note, after this, we're going to try to wrap up as close to 9 p.m. as we can. And afterwards, whoever is interested, is invited to continue the conversation at McShay's in Narberth. And if you have any questions about that, you can find Will, the handsome one in the glasses. That's my fiance. Thanks. Couple practical notes. The bathrooms are through that door. Just turn right. It's well marked, but if you need the bathrooms, they're that way. We do still have some books for sale in the back, and that's at the welcome table, which you saw when you walked in. I also want to make a quick shout out to our core team. We pulled together a group of people from all over the Philly area who've been planning and meeting and praying and working for 6 weeks or 2 months or something to make these events possible. So if you're on the core team, just raise your hand. They're all the small group leaders that you met last week. Thanks, guys. So the setup for each night in this series is going to be a little bit different, based on our speakers and based on our topics. Last week, we covered a lot of ground. We gave Bill a big task of covering the first 3 chapters of Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love, and everyone who heard him speak could probably echo that he did an amazing job. Thanks to him and JP2, in Bill's words, we are all ruined for life. So we're just so excited to introduce our next speaker. Before we invite our speaker up, tonight we're going to structure our evening a little bit differently than last night's was. We're going to open with the reading of some excerpts from chapter 4. So chapter 4 is the topic for tonight, sense and sentimentality. And what we're going to do is I'm going to invite up some readers, and we're going to go through some of the content of chapter 4. If you have the book in your hands and you're trying to follow along, just beware, we've cut some parts out only for the sake of time, and also so that those of you who don't have the book will be intrigued and go get it and read it. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite up our first speaker, and we'll get started. Hi. I'm just going to read. How could Mr. Right turn out to be so wrong? Many young people have had the experience of feeling they were in love with someone who at first seemed absolutely wonderful, only later to become greatly disappointed in the person, disillusioned about the relationship, and perhaps even pessimistic about the opposite sex as a whole. John Paul II explains why this often happens to men and women, and how we can avoid such disillusionment in the future. More than physical. In the last chapter, we considered one powerful aspect of the attraction between men and women, sensuality. We saw how this physical attraction is often characterized by a longing to enjoy the body of another person as an object of pleasure. There's a second kind of attraction, however, that goes beyond physical desire for the body. John Paul II calls it sentimentality. This represents more of an emotional attraction between the sexes. For example, when boy meets girl, in addition to noticing her good looks, he may also find himself powerfully drawn to her femininity, her warm personality, her kindness, or, as the Pope calls it, her feminine charm. Similarly, when girl meets boy, she not only may recognize that he is handsome, but also may find herself having strong feelings and admiration for his masculinity, his virtue, the way he carries himself, or as John Paul II calls it, his masculine strength. Such emotional reactions toward persons of the opposite sex happen all the time. We may experience sentimental affection for a spouse, a co-worker, or a longtime friend. Or we may experience it towards a person we're introduced to at a meeting, a stranger we see at the mall, or even a fictional character we see on TV. Sentimentality can become part of what leads to authentic, selfless love for another person. But if we are not careful, we can easily become enslaved to our emotions in ways that prevent us from truly being able to love others. A sinking ship. Love should integrate our emotions. In its fullest form, love is not a cold, calculated decision devoid of feelings. A spouse saying, "Honey, I love you. I have no feelings at all for you, but know that I'm committed to you," is not the ideal situation. Our emotions are meant to be caught up into our commitment to our beloved, thus enriching the relationship and giving us an even deeper experience of union with the other person. Real love, however, is very different from Hollywood love. Real love requires much effort. It is a virtue that involves sacrifice, responsibility, and a total commitment to the other person. Hollywood love is an emotion. It's something that just happens to you. The focus is not on commitment to another, but on what is happening inside you, the powerful, good feelings you experience when you are with this other person.
Of course, our feelings can and should be incorporated into a more fully developed love. However, when we are carried away by our emotions, we end up avoiding a very important question that is crucial for the long-term stability of a relationship, the question of truth. we must first and foremost consider the truth about the other person and the truth about the quality of our relationship. What kind of character does this person really have? How strong is our relationship really? Can this person shoulder a lot of responsibility in life? Is this the kind of person who will make sacrifices for me and put what's best for me and our family before himself? Is it really so? Furthermore, not only do feelings not have the task of seeking truth, but feelings also can be so powerful that they cloud the way we think about a person. John Paul II explains that when we are carried away by our emotions, sentimentality may hinder our ability to know that person as he or she really is. This is why he stresses that in any emotional attraction, the question of truth about the person is crucial. Is it really so? We should be asking ourselves, does this person really have the qualities and virtues I'm so attracted to? Are we really as good a fit for one another as I feel we are? Is he or she truly worthy of all my trust? Is there a problem in our relationship that I'm overlooking? Our feelings do not address these important questions. In fact, our feelings often get us to avoid these questions, leaving us with a distorted and exaggerated perception of our beloved. Note, in the following quote, John Paul II uses the philosophical term subject to refer to the human person. This is why in any attraction, and indeed here above all, the question of the truth about the person towards whom it is felt is so important. We must reckon with the tendency produced by the whole dynamic of emotional life for the subject to divert the question, is it really so, from the object of attraction to himself or herself to his or her emotions. In these circumstances, the subject does not inquire whether the other person really possesses the values visible to partial eyes, but mainly whether the newborn feeling for that person is a true emotion. This, again, does not mean that feelings are bad, but they cannot be the primary criterion for discerning the honest truth about another person or for clearly evaluating a relationship that we're in.
Dating losers. Men and women often persist in relationships that deep down they know are not good. They notice certain faults in the other person. Problems begin to surface. Anxiety and insecurity take over. They see the red flags, but do nothing to end the relationship. A lot of justification must take place. When you're emotionally attached, one young woman explained, you focus only on the good. You overlook the problems. You're quick to make excuses for the other person. This tendency to be swept away by our emotions and to avoid questions of truth is characteristic of sentimental love. We are inclined to exaggerate the value of the person we have feelings for, downplaying their faults and ignoring any problems we have in the relationship. John Paul II makes an amazing statement about how much our feelings can control our perception of the person to whom we're so attracted. Thus, in the eyes of a person sentimentally committed to another person, the value of the beloved object grows enormously, as a rule out of all proportion to his or her real value. Did you catch that? He doesn't say that in the beginning stages of sentimental love, we might sometimes exaggerate the value of the person. He says this happens as a rule. We do it all the time. And he didn't say that we tend to exaggerate the person's value only slightly. We tend to idolize the value of the person out of all proportion to who he or she is in reality. Social media romance. Social media makes it even easier for us to idolize others. We notice a person's photo and it sparks a curiosity. We view their profile, look at other pictures, and read their posts. Soon we're stalking them. We barely know this person in real life, but from what we see on screens, we make him or her out to be a very special person we hope to date someday. We read a lot more into things than is really there. Your brain can't help but fill in the gaps, one young adult explained. You create a character in your head, but it's not the real person. Many romantic relationships start out this way. Someone sends you a message, you respond, they craft a perfect response and seem very interesting, even though they may not be that way in person. It's easy to flirt and say things in a message that you'll never say face to face. Soon you share something personal, and they respond just the same way, with empathy or encouragement. You are becoming emotionally attached. Meanwhile, you find yourself giving a lot of thought as to what image you want to project of yourself. witty, compassionate, deep, fun. Next thing you know, you're in a romantic relationship, even though you've not truly encountered the real person, and the other person has not gotten to know the real you. You've both only been taken in by the images you've carefully projected of yourselves, ideal images, not your true selves. In such a relationship, you will remain unsatisfied, since you ultimately desire to be known and loved for who you really are.
Why do we tend to idealize those we're attracted to? These ideal values are the ones that we long with all our heart to find in another person someday. They exist in our deepest wishes, desires, and dreams. When we finally meet someone with whom there is the slightest bit of chemistry, our emotions tend to rapidly call up these ideal values and project them onto that person. Using people emotionally. When we speak of a man using a woman, we tend to think in terms of him using her for sexual pleasure. John Paul II, however, highlights that men and women can use each other for emotional pleasure as well. A devoutly Christian man and woman can have a physically chaste dating relationship, but can still be using each other for the good feelings they experience when together, for the emotional security of having a boyfriend or girlfriend, or for the pleasure they derive from imagining their wedding day, hoping the other person will finally be the one. If I fall into such sentimental idealization, my beloved is not truly the recipient of my affections. Rather, the other person represents an opportunity for me to enjoy these powerful emotional reactions stirring within my heart. In this case, I do not love the person, but rather the ideal values I have projected onto her. I do not truly love the person for her own sake, but use her for the emotional pleasure I derive from idealizing her. As John Paul II explains, the beloved who is idealized often becomes merely the occasion for an eruption in the subject's emotional consciousness of the values which he or she longs with all his heart to find in another person. Note again, John Paul here uses subject to refer to a human person. Disillusionment. The most tragic effect of sentimental idealization is that we end up not really knowing the person we find so attractive. A man in sentimental love may seek to be close to his beloved, spend a lot of time talking with her, and even go to Mass with her and pray with her. If he has idealized her, though, in reality he remains quite distant from her. The powerful attraction he feels depends not on her true value, but only on the ideal values he has projected onto her. Inevitably, this unchecked sentimentality will end in great disillusionment. When the real person comes to the surface, with all her faults and weaknesses, she cannot live up to the ideal. The lover will become quite disappointed in the beloved. The strong feelings will wane, and there will not be much left for the relationship to stand on. Even though the couple may give every outward appearance of being emotionally close to each other, they remain, in fact, quite divided from each other. I've seen this with young people on college campuses who give the impression to each other and to the rest of campus that they have a strong, intimate, and even very Catholic relationship. They may study together, eat meals together, walk arm in arm everywhere, and stay up late talking or praying the rosary together. When they break up 2 months later, everyone is shocked, including the couple. Yet no matter what external signs of closeness they manifested, if sentimentality and idealization were driving the relationship, they may not have really known each other personally, even though they felt close. John Paul II goes a step further. He points out that the couples may even be using each other for the emotional pleasure they derive from such idealization. These kinds of relationships quickly fall into disillusionment, frustration, and maybe even hatred, as the beloved can no longer provide the powerful rush of good feelings that came from the ideal that was projected onto them. The disillusionment that follows idealization can also be painful. Relationships that seemed so promising at first suddenly end with great heartache. I so badly wanted the relationship to work. I thought this was the one. That's why it was so terrifying for me to experience how hurt I could be by the one who I thought loved me, said one young adult after experiencing a very painful breakup. Others experienced a lot of shame. I was blind, said another young adult who idealized his girlfriend. It was embarrassing to see just how blind I was. My ego was shattered. I need to be more guarded next time. In sum, sentimentality can be a beautiful, enriching part of love, but it must be integrated with other essential ingredients or risk becoming the very opposite of love. In the next chapter, we will turn our attention to the single most important and most essential aspect of love in any relationship, self-giving.
All right, I thank you to our readers for reading so well. But really, I thank you, and I thank you everyone for entering into that reading. I'm excited to welcome up our speaker for this evening, and I want to welcome him by first sharing with you how I first met Colin. And actually, that was so. We mentioned last week that this isn't the first Love and Responsibility series that's happened ever. It actually started in New York City 7, 8 something years ago, and it happened. It was replicated in Nashville, Tennessee, about 4 years ago. This very same study, where I attended it when I was in Nashville, and Colin came down from New York to speak at one of the nights. And over the course of these weeks and these events, it was just like, this community was built, and these people were entering in really deeply into these teachings, and it was just a transformation, really, of the young adult community in Nashville. So ever since then, several of us have been so excited and hoping to bring this whole thing here to Philadelphia. So it's a really unique and an awesome honor to be able to now, 4 years later, invite Colin to come and speak to everyone here in Philly at this Love and Responsibility series. So I just want to introduce Colin so all of you know who he is. Colin is the director of Young Adult Outreach for the Archdiocese of New York. He was a seminarian for 7 years before discerning that Jesus and Mary were calling him elsewhere. As a seminarian, he received a BA in theology from Sacred Heart University and a Master's of Divinity from Mount St. Mary's Seminary. So those of you that are taking notes, listen up because he's smart. He also worked with Generation Life in Philadelphia as a Theology of the Body, Chastity, and Pro-Life speaker, and was a Theology of the Body for Teens trainer for Ascension Press. For many years, Colin has been going around the country giving Theology of the Body, sexual morality, and chastity talks to all ages. You can also catch Colin on EWTN's show, The Eucharist and Sunday Night Prime. Colin considers it his life mission to help the Blessed Virgin Mary's Immaculate Heart triumph as she promised in Fatima. So I'd like to welcome up Colin Nykaza.
Good evening. That's a little loud. Before we get started, please join me in a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. It's good to get outside of New York City once in a while, and it's good to be back here. I lived in Philadelphia for 2 years, so I definitely miss being here and living here. So in this talk, what I really want to do in a very short period of time is kind of talk a little bit of some of the aspects of chapter 4, but really focus on the ache of the human heart, which we all can relate to, we all encounter, we all experience. And I want to use that by sharing a little bit of my own journey and also talking a little bit about theology of the body. And don't go crazy taking notes, I'm not that smart, as Katie says, and you will see. But first of all, desire is defined as a sense of longing for a person or an object or hoping for an outcome. When a person desires something or someone, their sense of longing is excited by the enjoyment or the thought of the item or person, which we've been hearing about in this chapter 4 about sentimentality. and they want to take actions to obtain their goal. And desire is a good thing. We know this. Our desire for food keeps us alive. Our desire for relationship, for sexual union, keeps humanity in existence. It's a good thing. But if we don't receive the satisfaction for our desire, or for our longing, a painful ache can occur. An ache is defined as to yearn painfully. To yearn painfully. Now we hear in Luke, Jesus says, "For where your treasure is, there will also be your heart." For like 15 years of my life, I can honestly say my treasure, my ache, my desire was completely consumed by wanting to be in a relationship with a woman. And in one way, that is a good thing, right? My future wife, if I'm called to marriage, whoever she is, and every woman is a treasure. And my desire for a woman is healthy and good and normal. But for me at the time, the woman was my be-end and all. I thought she or being in a relationship would be my ultimate satisfaction, my ultimate happiness. That's exactly where all my heart was directed to. And I completely fell into what John Paul II was talking about, and through this chapter, in the responsibility, I exaggerated the value, in a sense, of marriage. I exaggerated the value of being in a relationship, and even the woman. Now, don't misunderstand me. The value of marriage and the value of the woman and the value of the relationship is huge. Of course, and it's holy, it's sacred. But for me, I idolized it. It was my be-end end all. It became an idol in my life. In a sense, it became my God. And I think a lot of us, even when we practice the faith, and we kind of know this up here, but a lot of us, working in the Archdiocese of New York, I hear it all the time in the conversations I get into with the young adults. We say things like, "When I find my future spouse, then I'll be happy." Or "When I find my future whatever, then I'll be happy." We say that a lot of the times in our hearts. And what I really want to focus on throughout this whole talk is that only God can satisfy the ache in the human heart for love, intimacy, union, and communion. Only God can satisfy that ache. Pope John Paul II says, Jesus Christ is the answer to the question posed by every human life. I would say Jesus Christ is the answer posed by every question from the human heart. And we see this all throughout the scripture. My favorite gospel is the Gospel of John, and it's saturated with this reality. You know, John 7:37, Jesus stood and proclaimed, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink." And the thirst he's talking about, we know, is not water. The thirst that he's talking about is love, intimacy, union, communion. "Anyone who thirsts, come to me and drink, and out of his heart shall flow rivers of living waters." Read the woman at the well. Unbelievable. It's packed filled with this understanding that only God can satisfy that ache. He says, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. And I would almost plug in here, everyone who drinks of a relationship, everyone who drinks of a marriage or being with your future spouse will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give will never thirst again. This Jesus is talking about. He's talking about our desire for love. And then he says, the water that I will give will become in them a spring of water gushing forth to the eternal life. We've got to pray that our hearts, our whole beings, which I'll end with to talk more about, just becomes a fountain and a wellspring of love, of life, and of light. That's what we're looking for. That's the satisfaction. Jesus is the satisfaction. And more importantly, not only are we craving and desiring Jesus, even 100-fold more so, Jesus is craving and desiring us. And not us as a community, but you as an individual. I mean, Jesus cries, "I thirst," from the cross. He wasn't talking about water. He was talking about you as an individual for your love. And we know in the woman at the well in the beginning, he asked the woman for a drink. When Jesus revealed the apparition to the Sacred Heart to Sarah Margaret Alacoque, he said, "My divine heart is so inflamed with the love for man, and for thee in particular." And I'd always plug your name in when you hear the part, "and for thee in particular," is so inflamed with the love of men that being unable to contain with itself the flames of its burning charity, it must and needs to be spread abroad. Jesus is craving for you, for your love, intimacy, union, communion that he wants with you. And it's what we are looking for ourselves, and only Jesus can satisfy this. And I want to show this in two brief ways. One, through my own journey, just sharing a little bit of my own experience, and then kind of backing it up with what the church is teaching on through theology of the body, sexual morality, and other things from the church. So first of all, let me be a little vulnerable and share a little bit of my journey in this area of the ache of the human heart. For me, I've been experiencing this powerful lake, as I kind of mentioned, since I was like the 5th grade. I mean, in 5th and 6th grade, I kind of had girlfriends here and there, as much as you can in 5th and 6th grade. Then around 7th grade, I started to gain a little weight. And I've kind of found out through my own experience, gaining a little weight, that all of a sudden I wasn't getting the girls that I wanted anymore. And this kind of happened through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I was kind of obsessed with this one girl, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I asked her out in 6th grade, she said no. I asked her out again in 7th grade, she said no. 8th grade, no. 9th grade, she said no. She said no. That was her resistance. And the reality is, I felt, though it's early on, I felt these rejections deeply. Like, it hurt. And I really desired her. And then I started to slim down junior year, and I was coming to my own, and all of a sudden, girls started to respond again. I was working out, I was getting jacked, and I had a beautiful girlfriend for 2 years in junior and senior year. And then all of a sudden, around when I became 19, I started to lose my hair. And at the time, I was devastated. I didn't realize how perfect my head was going to be shaped. But because up until then, in my experience, how I looked kind of depended on if I was going to get what my heart was looking for. The love, the intimacy, the union, and community I was looking for was completely dependent on how I looked. So here I am now, first of all, idolizing marriage, idolizing a woman, idolizing what I'm trying to experience. And then I got the world telling me, well, you're losing your hair now. And people are like telling me early on, maybe get hair implants or something else. And the reality is, like, I was getting boxed into this despair because I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm not lovable. Now I'm not going to find the love that I'm looking for. And I got trapped into this despair. And I think all of us can relate, no matter what type of security, it might be insecurity that you're going through or whatnot. I think we all can somehow relate to me. And for me, that was happening. Because again, my sentimental idolization was marriage, the woman. This was going to be my ultimate happiness. And then I got the world telling me, well, because how you look, you're not going to get that. And I got trapped. And it caused me to pray more, because I was literally praying a lot, being like, Jesus, Mary, please let me stop losing my hair. And which I'm thankful for, because it opened up a much greater, more powerful prayer experience than I've ever had in my life, because I was continually praying for this one thing. And all of a sudden, it was one night, I was in my room, and I found this book in my mom's room about all these different apparitions of Our Lady. And I was reading about Our Lady of Fatima. And all I can tell you, without getting too much detail, is that I was reading the quote when she appears to the 3 children, and she asked Lucia during these apparitions, are you willing to suffer for the conversion of sinners and for reparation for sins committed against my immaculate heart? And all of a sudden, I just felt Our Lady's love just being poured into me after that quote. And all I can really tell you about that encounter with her is that it was definitely her. And it was at the very moment in my life that I felt so unlovable, especially from a woman's love, that Our Lady poured her love into me and showed me how lovable I really was, how much she loved me as a woman. I was blessed to go that summer to St. Padre Pio's canonization. And I got to go to the House of Loreto and all these other, San Giovanni Rotondo. And I don't know if you know too much about the House of Loreto, but it's the house that was in Nazareth where the Annunciation happened, where the Incarnation happened, where Our Lady and Jesus lived early on in their life. Now, thousands of years ago, a couple thousand plus years ago, the Muslims were taking over a lot of part of Nazareth, and what happened was there was a big threat that this house was going to be destroyed. And basically what happened, according to tradition, is that angels literally picked up this house, and they kept moving it to different places, and it finally landed in Loreto, Italy. And the local bishop was hearing about this house that's been flying around and realized that here it is in my backyard now here. And so what they ended up doing is they built the basilica immediately. He was like, build the basilica so it doesn't move anymore. And so to this day, you can go to Loreto, Italy, and there it is. And there's a lot of scientific proof behind this house, and we'll get into the details, but there's certain pollen that's only in Nazareth, and the stones and everything. But anyway, I was in this house, blessed during that pilgrimage to the priest had Mass in his house. And all I can tell you is that from the moment of the consecration to the end of the consecration, Jesus just humbled me, my heart, with his presence, with his love. And the only way I can explain it is that everything I was ever looking for in any relationship and why I was doing what I was doing was being ultimately satisfied. The only way I can explain my encounter with him is satisfaction. and it was brief, and it was quick, but it was ultimate satisfaction of the human heart. Jesus was showing me, well before my journey would have been out, is that only He can satisfy the ache in my heart for love, intimacy, union, and communion. And so this is a little bit of how I came to that realization, and all of a sudden, I entered the seminary, and I came across all of these teachings of theology of the body. And I was so blown away by it, because it was putting words to what I was experiencing this whole past year and a half. And so what I want to do is just give you guys just a little tidbits, in the short period of time of just kind of proving of what I'm talked about only Jesus can satisfy the ache of the human heart, through what the church teaches on this reality, what the church teaches on marriage and sexual union and theology of the body. And why, and bring us to a deeper understanding of why we have these deep aches and yearnings and desires. So theology of the body, and you guys know, some of you who were last week learned probably a lot of it from Bill Donahue, phenomenal speaker on this, much better than I. But, so theology of the body itself, theology, of course, is the study of God. So the title suggests that we can learn something about God in and through our bodies. And now keep in mind, when I say the word body throughout this talk, we're talking about the whole human person. Body and soul and spirit, right? Not just the body. Our society, our culture loves to hone on just the physical attributes of the body, but we're talking about the whole human person. So the title suggests that we can learn something about God in and through our bodies. But how can we learn anything about God? We have to remember that God, first and foremost, is spirit. Right? Before Jesus came, before the incarnation happened, God was there. So here we got this God who is pure spirit, creates the physical world, creates humanity. And knowing now how us humans, how do we learn things? We learn things through physical realities, right? In and through the senses. So we hear, we taste, we touch, we smell. So we learn things that comes transmitted through our senses into our mind, and we learn. So here we have this God who is pure spirit, who wants to reveal himself to us physical beings. So how does he do it? Through physical realities, right? This is how we encounter God. This is how we learn about God. Easy definition of a sacrament is a physical sign that reveals an invisible reality, which transforming grace has passed through. Visible sign reveals invisible reality, which transforming grace has passed through. So for example, baptism. We are all born of the invisible reality of original sin. Right? Our souls are stained with sin. We can't see it. So we have physical words of institution. I baptize you in the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The physical water being poured over the body. The physical pouring of the water over the body reveals and communicates the invisible reality of washing away our original sin. And matter matters in the sacraments. Right? You can't use tar or Coca-Cola or beer to baptize a baby. Right? You need to use water. Matter matters in the sacraments. And now all the physical creation out there can reveal something about God. All the physical creation. Take a beautiful starry night. To think that those stars are millions of light years away. That we're one small solar system compared to this massive, never-ending universe. That we're one small planet compared to this massive, never-ending universe. If we could see God within the sky, the universe itself reveals to us that he's huge, that he's infinite. The fact that the universe is infinite reveals to all of us that God is infinite. But what part of creation reveals the most about God? What is infinitely greater than any beautiful starry night and mountain landscape? And we all know we can encounter God in these realities. I mean, think of those times that you just stood and looked up at the sky at these beautiful stars, or just stood by yourself and looked at this beautiful mountain landscape. It brings awe. It brings wonder. You're encountering God. But what part of creation, a millionfold besides that, reveals the most about God, as we know? Who? You and I. We've been made in the image and likeness of God. And if we could see God within our own bodies, as male and female, our bodies themselves reveal to us God's awesome mystery. What do I mean by God's awesome mystery? If we could put God in one word, what does John say in his letters? He says, God is love. But to understand what he means that God is love, we have to understand what love is, and we have to understand how love works. Because a lot of us think that God is love because he loves us. It's part of it, but it's much more powerful, beautiful, and profound than that. It says, he doesn't say God is loving, he says God is love. What love is. Now, we use that word for all sorts of things. Here we say, I love my mom and dad, I love my wife, I love my dog, I love pizza. There's a huge difference between loving your wife and loving pizza, right? At least I hope there is. True, authentic love is longing for the other person's good. It's choosing and acting for the good of the other. It's becoming a gift for the other's sake, not for some type of profit back. And we were learning more about that in this chapter 4. Like, we kind of idolize and we kind of emotionally want to feel something when I'm with somebody. And if we're not feeling that thing with that person, we kind of idolize it and we build it up, and then she doesn't quite satisfy me anymore. We've got to transform our understanding of love, of what that is. It's true sacrificial gift coming outside of yourself and becoming the gift for the good of the other. And now how love works. We all know how love works, right? We need to have at least two persons, right? So let's just use John and Mary as an analogy. So let's say John's into Mary. We know love has to have at least two persons. We have to have John, will, and I know it can go either way, but John, say he wants to marry Mary, hopefully he'll propose, right? So we know love has to be initiated, right? In order for relationship to continue, Mary has to say, right? So we know love obviously has to be received and accepted. I know this is rocket science, guys. Love has to be received and accepted. And then love has to be given back. She's got to show up to the altar and actually marry the guy, right? So we know love has to have at least two persons, has to be initiated, has to be received and accepted, and it has to be given back. So now we're going to start tapping into what it means that God is love. All right? How many persons do we believe there is in the one God? 3, right? So we've got God the Father. He's pouring out his life and love to God the Son. The Son is receiving the love of the Father, accepting it, and giving himself back to the Father. The love between the Father and the Son is so powerful, so beautiful, so real, that it is a whole nother person. The Holy Spirit is nothing within himself but the exchange of love between the Father and the Son. So literally, within the Trinity itself, there's this explosion of love, intimacy, union, and communion happening within God himself. He is love himself. All right? The Catechism puts it this way, guys, the absolute meaning of our life. You guys ready for the absolute meaning of your life? Yep. No. Think of the millions of dollars in heartache out there that people are trying to find the meaning of their lives. The Catechism sums it up in 2 beautiful sentences. I feel like this sentence should be on every Christian household in a plaque or somewhere in their household. But listen to this. It's fascinating. God's very being is love. By sending his only Son, Jesus obviously, and the Spirit of love in the fullness of time, the Holy Spirit, God has revealed his innermost secret. Itself, God has revealed his innermost secret. That God himself is an eternal exchange of love. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And he has destined us to share in that exchange. Hear what I just said? He has destined us to share in that exchange. So you know what this means? This means that we've been literally created for love. Do we not know this? Who in this room, in one way or another, is not starving and craving for love, intimacy, union, communion? It's why we do what we do. It's why we want to get married. It's why we want to date. It's why we want to have friends. It's why we don't want to be rejected. The human heart craves for love. And you should, because you've literally been created for it. But here's the clincher. Again, only God can satisfy the ache of the human heart for love. We've literally been created to enter into that Trinity, body, soul, and spirit, for all eternity, and experience that explosion of love forever and ever and ever. This is what we are craving for. And I promise you, if you do not realize that this is what you're craving for, I promise you, you're going to spend the rest of your life going from one thing to the next, trying to satisfy that ache. And it will never, ever fulfill. It's like we got God-shaped holes in our hearts. If God doesn't fill that hole, you can go from relationship to whatever. It's not going to fulfill. So now we've got 2 beings. We've got God and we've got man who are meant to participate in relationship with each other. Now, using that dating analogy of John and Mary, so in a sense, for this relationship to happen, what does God first have to do? He's got to propose. He's got to give himself. What does the priest say when he raises the propose? This is my body, which will be. God is pouring out his life and love to all humanity. In order for that relationship to continue, what does humanity have to do? What do you as an individual have to do? We've got to receive God's love. When do we receive God? Right? First and foremost in baptism, then every single time we receive that little white host, we are literally receiving the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. The very satisfaction of the heart, of every single human heart. But here's the clincher. In order for that relationship to continue, what does man have to do? We've got to give ourselves back to God. And this is where many of us fall short. So let's just use the Mass as an example. Now, I know I'm speaking mostly to the choir here. I kind of usually give this Mass analogy more with the teenagers, but it still works, and it's worth sharing. Basically, the Mass has been developed in a way to participate in a relationship with God, right? But a lot of us kind of go to Mass and we kind of get bored and we're not getting much out of Mass. Like it's almost we're there in the sense to get a sense of form of entertainment. Now, what's happening here is that our generation, we're so used to sitting down, watching something, and we expect to be entertained, right? So we sit, we watch, we got video games, we got concerts, we got iPads, iPhones, constant entertainment. We sit, we watch, we're entertained, we go to Mass, we sit, we watch, and we're like, what the heck am I doing here? We get kind of bored, especially the younger generation. Right? But the Mass is developed a way to participate in a relationship with God. So let's use our imaginations for a second. Hopefully it's not too much of imagination. But imagine I'm on a blind date with a girl. Right? And I go into the restaurant, and she's sitting on the side of the table, and she's sitting there, and I sit down, and she starts telling me all about herself, what she does for a living, her family, her friends. What if I was on the other side of the table, barely paying attention, kept checking my watch? I'm a big Giants fan, Mets fan. Sorry, I know you guys are in Philly, but let's say I'm like watching that on the screen, and then right when she's done talking, I got up and I walked out of that restaurant without saying a word to her. Girls, what would you say to me? A jerk. Right? Now, how many of us at the time, or sometimes, experience the Mass like this? First of all, especially when I was younger, the reason why I was going to Mass was because my parents forced me to go. And all I really cared was Sunday, so all I really cared about was the time the Giants were playing. So what would happen is I'd go to Mass would begin, so I would be pouring out his life and love. But what I'm doing, I'm thinking the Giants are playing at 4 o'clock. I'm thinking about what I did over the weekend. I'm thinking about what's going on next week. Mass is going on. We stand up for the gospel. God starts pouring out his life and love to the gospel, but what am I doing? Especially back then, I'm like, oh man, that girl's kind of cute over there, that girl's kind of cute over there, not paying attention. Right? We go up to receive the Eucharist, and we're supposed to do the sign of the cross, but it's more like we're shooting flies in front of our face, and all we're really waiting for is Mass is ended, go in peace, boop, and I'm out of here. Sometimes I'd receive the Eucharist and I'd walk out that back door because I fulfilled my Sunday obligation. When I was old enough to drive in high school, I'd go to Mass, go to Bulletin, go to the mall, go home, look, Mom and Dad went to Mass. Is there any relationship going on between me and God? No. Of course we're bored. If I'm on a date with a girl, if I'm not hearing what she's saying, understanding it, and having some type of intelligent conversation back, there's going to be no second date. Your encounter with God, your relationship with God will dramatically change the more you put something into the relationship. Now, that doesn't mean like you're going to become best friends with Jesus overnight. Like, that doesn't happen. It takes time. Like, if I walked up to one of you guys who I've met for the first time, like, hey, you want to be my best friend? Like, what is wrong with these guys? You know? So relationships take time. It takes work. It takes effort. And test this out. The next time you're at Mass, try to really pay attention to what's going on in the Mass. Now, statistically, our attention span is like 3 to 5 seconds. I'm not saying to pay attention to the whole Mass. Mine's like 1 to 2. I know what it's like not to pay attention. But start off with the gospel. Hear what the gospel's saying. Allow it to enter in your heart and act it out. Allow the gospel to come alive in your heart. And then goodness gracious, when you're receiving the Eucharist, guys, it takes 10 minutes, according to the church says, for Jesus to dissolve. I mean, think about that, 10 minutes. So think when you receive the Eucharist, give Jesus that 10 minutes. So I know, but believe me, I know. I'm in New York City. I'm out that door ready to get to my next thing. Give him the 10 minutes. Experience that encounter with Jesus. So see what God is doing here. God, who is pure love, is initiating his life and love to all humanity. He wants all of humanity to receive that life and love, accept it, and allow that life and love to grow within inside of us. And he wants us to pour forth that life and love back to himself and to the whole world. Remember what Jesus was saying? I'll come to me and who are thirsty and drink, and your hearts will become springs of rivers of life. Right? This is really high, dense theological understanding here. And the way the church explains this whole reality is through, which I'm using here, through sexual analogy. It's the way the Bible explains it. It's the way the church explains it. And we're going to feel very uncomfortable with explaining these truths with sexual analogies for 2 reasons. One, a lot of us grow up in our culture today, and we look at sexual union through like a prism of lust. Right? So it's like, for example, when I say the word sex or sexual union, are we thinking God, holiness, Trinity, or are we thinking of something a little less than holy? Probably something a little less than holy. So what I want to do really briefly, and hopefully Bill helped also when he gave the talk last week, is to help transform that prism into a prism of love. Because everything about the human person, everything about the human body, everything about the male and female in the call to communion is sacred, it's holy, it's good. And another reason why is because we kind of grow up in a very Protestant nation, through a puritanical, Manichaean reality. You know, if you guys have heard of Christopher West, he kind of puts it as spirit good, body bad mentality. As everything had to do with holiness was a spiritual reality, then everything had to do with the body and sex and is kind of bad and evil and tainted. No, that is a heresy of the Catholic Church called Manichaeism. But nonetheless, we have to realize, transforming those prisons, not understanding that everything we're talking about is good, holy. So see what God is doing here. And keeping in mind, this is just an analogy. All right, this is not the reality of the situation. God, who is pure love, is initiating his life in love. He wants all of us to receive his life in love. In a sense, using the analogy, conceive his life in love. He wants that life in love to grow within inside of us, and he wants us to give birth to that life in love back to himself and to the whole world. And it may sound weird if it's the first time we're ever hearing it this way. And this is not just a metaphor. There is a woman so freely, so totally, so completely to God's life and love that she literally received within her own womb and conceived divine life. The Blessed Virgin Mary is the perfect icon of what it means to be human, to receive, conceive, and bear forth life. She did it physically. We are all meant to do it spiritually. What is being revealed here is that God wants to marry us. The Bible is packed, filled with marriage analogies. The whole Bible is a love story between God and man. It begins with the marriage between Adam and Eve. It ends with the marriage between the new Adam and the new Eve, or Christ the bridegroom and the church's bride. In the Old Testament, God said he was the husband, and the Jewish people was his wife. Every time they worshipped other gods, what did he call them? Adulterers. In the New Testament, we have all of these analogies explaining the relationship between God and man. Sheep and shepherd, vine and branch, the most common analogy throughout the whole New Testament, bridegroom and bride. Where is Jesus when he performs his first miracle? Where is he? Not a coincidence. Book of Revelation, heaven is explained as his wedding banquet. God wants to marry us. There's an eternal marriage happening here. This is what the marriage that every human heart is looking for. This is why we ache for marriage. This is why we wait for the other. This is why we've literally been created male and female and called to communion. And he says in the Catechism, the church longs to be united with Christ, her bridegroom, in the glory of heaven, where she will one day rejoice with her beloved in the happiness and rapture that will never end. This is good news. Now, God wanted this plan of marriage, this eternal marriage, to enter that explosion of love of the Trinity for all eternity, to be so obvious to us, so clear to us, that he not only gave us all of these images throughout the whole Bible of this marital and eternal marriage, but he literally creates us male and female and calls us to communion. I mean, did you ever wonder why we've been created male and female? God could have done anything. What is this all about? And we see St. Paul says it right. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Right? This is St. Paul referring to the book of Genesis, right from the very beginning. Now, referring to the two shall become one flesh, he says this is a great mystery. And I mean in reference to Christ and the church. St. Paul is telling us right here that sexual union, marital love, which our society is craving for, as we see it all over distorted in so many different ways, he says it's a great mystery. And I mean in reference to Christ in the church. Understanding the marriage in its proper context between a man and woman and their call to sexual union is supposed to be for all of us the sign, the physical sign. Remember what a sacrament is. The physical sign that leads us to Christ's marriage with his church. I mean, keep in mind, it's just a sign. Like if I'm driving to Philadelphia, it says Philadelphia sign this way, I'm going down the road and I see the sign pointing Philadelphia, 50 miles this way. You guys would think I was an idiot if I kind of pulled up next to the sign, got out of the car, wrapped around the sign, and be like, okay, I arrived in Philadelphia. No, I was like, what's wrong with this guy? But this is exactly what our culture does. When we idolize marriage within our own heart, when we idolize the relationship or our future spouse, that's us like getting us out of the car and wrapping our arms around that sign. No, it's supposed to point us, launch us, lead us to our end destination of that eternal explosion of love within the Trinity. He gave us a map, a blueprint, literally chiseled on our very own bodies as male and female. And if we could read the map correctly, if we could understand the legend of the map correctly, you guys know the legend of the map explains all the deep understanding, all the different signs. This is what the map will literally reveal to us. Gentlemen, we represent God by our very masculinity, by the way that God made us physically, as initiator of God's life and love. This is why we've been created this way. We represent God as initiator of life and love. You beautiful woman, every single one of you represent all of humanity as receivers of God's life and love. This is why you receive the man, conceive a child, and bear forth life. Sexual union between a married man and woman is supposed to be the physical sign that reveals to all of us that God is love. We're meant to receive, conceive, and bear forth that life and love. What these old celibate men in Rome are telling us is that sexual love between a married man and woman is supposed to be a little glimmer and foretaste of what we're going to be experiencing in heaven for all eternity. I don't know about you, I want to get to heaven. Now, this does not mean that heaven is going to be this eternal sexual experience. It'd be a gross misunderstanding of what I'm saying here. Well, it's got to be said, because sometimes people... But the reality is, what they're telling us is that all the physical and emotional pleasures in this act is supposed to be a little glimmer and foretaste of what we're going to be experiencing in heaven for all eternity. It's supposed to be the very map and blueprint and sign that God has given us to get us there. It's not the be and end all. It's the sign, the map that launches us, that leads us to our destination of heaven. This is good news. This means that the ache is only going to be satisfied in God. And this is really good news for a lot of married couples, because I've talked to numerous married couples, and they'll explain to you the ache does not go away. It's because only God can satisfy. The heart has been created for the infinite. You cannot satisfy the infinite with finite things. As you know what it's called if you try to satisfy the infinite with finite? It's called addiction. So you try to do it over and over and over and over again. Pope Benedict said it. He says, the joy of the marital embrace is meant to be a sign, a little glimmer of our ultimate purpose and reality of our existence. Participation in the eternal love with the Trinity. This is what the human heart is craving for. And this whole analogy with sexual love in heaven is not foreign to us. It's in our culture. We see it in music, we see it in songs. Listen to this song by Lady Gaga. I kid you not, Lady Gaga. Unbelievable song. Now, Lady Gaga has no idea, but she, in one way, is really singing the church's teaching on sexual union, singing theology of the body. I don't think she knows, but she is. So I'm not supporting her as like a phenomenal artist, but just listen to these lyrics. Unbelievable. You know the On the Edge of Glory, that song? As she's talking, and she's comparing sexual love, sexual union to heaven, on the edge of glory. She says, another shot before we kiss the other side. Another shot, which we'll do later after this talk. Before, well, not the other thing, but before they kiss the other side. Or she's talking about the other side, heaven. And then she's like, tonight, yeah, baby, tonight. You guys know something, right? She says, I'm on the edge of something final we call life tonight. I'm on the edge of something final we call life tonight. What do we call final eternal life? Heaven. And then she's like, all right. Put on your shades, and the very next lyric, put on your shades because I'll be dancing in the flames. You've got to be kidding me. Listen to this. Put on your shades because I'll be dancing in the flames. Who is active in the sexual act besides the man and woman? Who is active? Who puts the soul into the body if conception happens? Well, the Holy Spirit, right? How was the Holy Spirit revealed at Pentecost? Flames of fire. Put on your shades because I'll be dancing in the flames. The whole world thinks she's talking about hell or some type of imagery of hell. She knew that the whole world would be thinking about this would be hell. You know what the very next lyric is? She says, it isn't hell if everybody knows my name. Now, besides cheers, where are you going to be before everybody knows your name? Heaven. We see this saturated. I just want to show that this whole understanding of sexual love in heaven it's not foreign to us. It's in our culture. We sense it deep down inside. That's why we fall easily to making it an idol. Because we know it's supposed to be some type of fulfillment, but what it really is, it's supposed to lead us and point us and get us to our ultimate fulfillment. The church is not saying not to have sex outside of marriage because it's bad, because it's unholy, because it's dirty. They're saying it's so good. It's so valuable as a culture. You have no clue on how valuable it really is. You know what all of this sexual confusion in our world is? It's our longing for heaven gone berserk. We have no clue what we're looking for. And we see this played out in 1,000,001 ways in our culture today. Now, as I said, the woman, you guys are key to this plan. You represent all of humanity as the bride. All of the church, both male and female, we're bride in the sense, and Jesus Christ is the bridegroom. Every single time I'm meant to look at a woman, she reveals to me I'm meant to receive, conceive, and bear forth life. You're key to the plan. The evil one knows this. The evil one, in one sense, very powerfully hates the woman, and particularly hates her ability for new life. Who does the serpent go up to in the garden? Why? Because she's the weaker sex? She's key to the plan. He knows if we can distort how men look at women and how women look at themselves, he can distort and get us away from God and not towards God. And we see this completely being played out in the garden. He hates the woman for two reasons. One, because he knows that she's key to the plan. They're all meant to receive, conceive, and bear forth God's life and love. But also, every single time a woman conceives life in the womb, you know what it reminds him of? The incarnation. That God took on flesh. He cannot stand it. He hates it. He attacks the woman and her ability to bear forth life. And we see this being played out in a very real way in the garden. Look at this in the very beginning. The garden of Adam and Eve, the knowledge of good and evil, all that imagery. Who was put in charge as protector of the garden? Adam, right? The serpent comes into the garden. Where is he in this scene? The serpent goes right up to Eve. Adam was supposed to be the protector of the garden. He should have, from the very beginning, protected his wife, Eve. But what happens? The serpent comes in, the fall happens, welcome to the sin of Adam. Jesus Christ, the ultimate bridegroom, revealing to all of us men in particular what it means to be a bridegroom. Once again, the serpent is coming up to the church, his bride. Adam should have taken the hit himself. He chickened out, he backed out. But Jesus, he takes the hit himself. Meditate on what's happening on the cross. He's taking the hit himself. He protects the church, his bride. And taking that hit opens up the doors to eternal life, opens up the doors to heaven for all eternity for us. And we can see this, and you can see this in 1,000,001 ways in our culture. The woman and her ability to give life, there is a raging battle and war happening here. And there's so much more to it as a culture we have no clue. We've got to be protectors of women. We've got to be protectors of her ability to conceive and bear forth life. It's the very sign and blueprint that gets us to heaven. It's the very sign and reminder of the incarnation, and the evil one cannot stand it, and he is going to spend all of his fury, and you see it, hitting the woman and her ability to bear life. And we see this, so there's two things he does. He attacks how men look at women, and he attacks how women look at themselves. One of the most powerful ways that he's attacking how men look at women is through pornography. And I'm not standing up here pointing fingers or condemning anybody. None of us are perfect. All of us have fallen in one shape, form, or another to some type of sexual sin. Thank God for mercy. Thank God for God's mercy. But the reality is, he's very successfully really attacked how men look at women. One of the ways is through pornography. Pornography literally trains men to judge the value of a woman by how much lust he feels for her. This absolutely cripples the man's ability to love. And we also kind of talked about that in chapter 4. Like we use, and even emotionally, we can use someone for the satisfaction, emotionally, to try to feel something from them. That is crippling your ability for true, authentic love. Because I realize, guys, lust cannot satisfy. Because the temptation of the ache is we know how this plays out. It tempts us to drink, it tempts us to masturbate, it tempts us to have sex outside of marriage. Because the ache is so powerful, we're getting a little taste of something. It's almost like a drug, almost in a sense, to kind of ease the pain. But lust and physical pleasure, and we've all experienced it, cannot satisfy. It never does. But some of us get so wrapped up and so caught in our ache that we're willing just to settle for that little counterfeit just to ease the pain for a little bit. But we know what ends up happening. It gets us deeper and deeper into the ache, and we're actually worse off. And how the evil one attacks how women look at themselves is to convince the woman that she is not beautiful. Now, I can't speak for you guys, obviously as a male, but I have 3 sisters, and I have a lot of friends that are girls, and they allow me to kind of share these few insights about this reality of what's happening. What's happening a lot of time, and I'll briefly go through it for the sake of time, is that society tells women, just like anything else, if you want to find the love that you're looking for, well, you got to look like this. And they put this image on this billboard and on this magazine. This is happening rapidly for those of any of us who work in high schools. You can see this played out in a million ways with these poor teenage girls. And they realize that their bodies looks a lot differently than the body they're seeing on the screen. Now, first of all, we know now that a lot of those bodies you're seeing in the magazines and the computers, that they're all computer generated. Right? They take a picture of the girl, they fix her eyes, they lower her chin, they fix her cheeks, they fix her abs, and that's the image you see. It's a computer-generated body. It's an unattainable beauty. You can't look like that. But there's a lot of women falling into thinking that they're not beautiful because of what they're seeing or what society's telling them. But the reality is, guys, is that every single one of you are so, so beautiful. More than you could possibly imagine. Physical is not associated for the love that you're looking for. And I learned this myself because I was experiencing those insecurities myself with the losing of my hair. Our Lady, I believe, is appearing in Medjugorje. She may or may not be, I don't know. But one of the visionaries asked her, why is she so beautiful? And this is what Our Lady said. It was always fascinating by this quote. She says, I'm beautiful because I love. If you want to be beautiful, love. She says, no human being does not desire beauty. To get to this eternal marriage, there's 4 quick ways to get there. There's the marriage between a man and woman. That's where most of us are being called to. It's not your be and end all, but it's your path. The husband helps the wife get to heaven, the wife helps the husband get to heaven. Another beautiful vocation, beautiful way is the priesthood. Who does the priest marry, in a sense, when he becomes a priest? The church, right? This is why we call the priest what? Father. The love between him and the church is so powerful, so beautiful, that numerous spiritual children are born, and this is why we call the priest Father. Another beautiful vocation is the religious life. Let's take the sisters, consecrated life. Who does the sister marry? Jesus Christ the bridegroom. This is why they wear either a wedding ring or they wear something on their neck to show their marriage with Christ. And the love between the two is so powerful, so beautiful, so real that numerous spiritual children are born, and this is why we call Teresa of Calcutta Mother Teresa. And another beautiful vocation, it's not an official vocation in the church, but I know so many people who are in this state, including myself, is the single life. So are you telling me that I'm not living, or you're not, if you're single, that you're not living up to what God's calling you to do right now because you're yet not in your vocation? But then when you find your spouse, or then when you find your calling, then all of a sudden, well, I mean, I'd be in a lot of trouble because I'm 35 already, and that means I'm just kind of wandering around doing nothing, right? So there's got to be more to this than meets the eye. Because all that matters, which we're learning, especially from our physical bodies, guys, I mean, think about this. Our bodies make, again, no sense by themselves. A naked body makes no sense. Like, why the heck did you make me this way, God? Oh. Then in light of each other, oh. I'm meant for her, she's meant for me. If you look at the deeper meaning, St. Paul says, you are not your own. You are meant to become a gift to each other, to come outside of yourself. How many different ways, 1,000,001 ways are you who are single giving of yourself in your work, in your volunteer, in your ministry? You're living what Pope John Paul II calls the nuptial meaning of your body. All that really matters, is that you put God first in your life, realizing that He meant to satisfy that ache. And then you're giving of yourself to every single person that you come in contact with. That you literally become a fountain and a wellspring of love, life, and intimacy and union to the person in front of you. And that doesn't have to be only in the romantic relationship way. At least I hope not, because there's a million and one ways us single people are doing it every single day. So what I would do is, I would change, if you were single, getting back to the 8, I would just change your approach to dating in a sense. I'm not saying if you're on, dating sites are all good. I've known a lot of couples who are on dating sites, going out, meeting your future spouse is all good. I mean, I basically get paid to set up opportunities for this to happen. It's good. It's holy. But the reality is, I would just really strongly encourage you to redirect that H. Because what happens is, if we're talking back to chapter 4, if we have the idealization of sentimentality and we're focused on the future spouse, and we kind of just get all of that energy towards there, it's, as my dating experience, it leads to trouble. And it just leads to a lot of mess. One thing I would encourage you, gentlemen, pursue Our Lady. In a sense, go on dates with Our Lady. Allow your heart to be so lost in the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and pray that your future spouse, if God's calling you to marriage, is so lost in the Immaculate Heart of Mary, that's where you will find her. Women, allow Jesus Christ, the bridegroom, to pursue you. Go on. Jesus is constantly asking you out. Say yes. I know friends who have tea with Jesus and all these different types of things. But allow him to pursue you. Allow your heart to be so lost in the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Allow him to reveal your beauty of who you are, your dignity as a woman. And pray that your future spouse, if God's calling you to marriage, to be so lost in the Sacred Heart of Jesus that is where you will find him. And I promise you, you're going to have a lot more fun when you go out into these different gatherings. Because when you redirect the focus, the pressure's kind of off. You don't have to act a certain way or be a certain way or look a certain way. And then that's when you start to shut down and you get insecure. And then, what did I say? I can't believe I thought that and said that. Or when you analyze it a million ways when you get home, or maybe I'm the only one who does that. But it transforms through your whole approach. And the reality is Jesus is going to give you what you're looking for. He's not dangling a carrot in front of you to take you away from your happiness. It's not our God. I'll end with a death story of one of my friends. Jeff Couture is a priest in the Bridgeport Diocese. Had a crazy coke addiction and alcoholic when he was a teenager. His addiction got so bad at one point that he was giving blood to a nearby Red Cross to buy his next fix. And he basically, his body was so messed up with all the coke that he did that while he was giving his blood, he clinically died for 3 to 5 seconds. Now this sounds like a long time, it doesn't sound like a long time, but he was dead. It's a very long time in the medical field. He died an atheist. This is what he said happened. He said, all of a sudden, when he died, he found himself in a black abyss. And he said 2 things were infused into his mind. He said he knew he was dead and he knew there was a God. He doesn't know how he knew that, he just knew it. He said he could feel millions of souls behind him, but he couldn't see them. He looked up and he saw this white wall along the horizon. He said he knew it was heaven, and he longed to go there. And he said he saw a creature walking up and down the wall, and when he kept trying to check out what that creature was, all of a sudden it came right in front of him, and he saw his beautiful guardian angel. And he said he knew it was his guardian angel. He said when he looked in his guardian angel's eyes, they weren't like ours with retinas and people. He said they were pitch black. He said as soon as he looked in his guardian angel's eyes, he relived every moral decision he ever made. Every time he followed his conscience, every time he didn't follow his conscience. Instantly. It's called a personal judgment. This is what the church teaches. A lot of us have this understanding that when we die, we're gonna go before this big throne, and God's gonna be sitting on this throne. And he's gonna be opening this book. He's gonna be like, "Oh, Kyle, bad news, bro. Your bad outweighs the good. You're going to hell." And he condemns them to hell. And he's like, "Oh, Steph, great news. Your good outweighs the bad. You're going to heaven." As if God is condemning us or choosing heaven or hell for us. No, guys, we choose it every single time. We follow our conscience or don't follow our conscience. Now, some issues are stronger than others. The difference between mortal and venial sin, that's a whole other topic. But nonetheless, we choose heaven or hell ourselves. So Jeff said, he told Jesus, because it's the way he lived his life, he was like, I chose hell. So he told Jesus, I choose hell. He said he was about to jump into hell. And all of a sudden he got caught and he got brought on top of the earth right next to his guardian angel. And he said all of a sudden, he said, again, he died an atheist, but he said he knew Jesus Christ was standing behind him. And he said he felt all of a sudden this penetrating through his whole being love, light. He says, Kyle, all I can explain is that everything I was ever looking for, and the sex I was doing, the drugs, the relationships, the rock and roll, everything he was doing, he said was being ultimately satisfied. Everything he was doing was being ultimately satisfied. And all of a sudden he heard these words. He heard, Jeff, I love you. Jeff, I love you. Now go do unto others I have done unto you. And he got thrown back into his body and he woke up. Now obviously that was a pretty profound experience. Not all of us are going to have a second chance like that. But he always asked me to end my talk with this because he heard this talk before and he was like, Kyle, everything you say, everything the church teaches on this is spot on. It reveals two things. As I said, only God can satisfy that ache of your heart. And it also shows God's mercy. There's nothing you guys have done, nothing that I have done that God won't forgive. God's mercy is unbelievably powerful and endless. Mercy comes from the Latin word misericordia, which literally means to give one's heart to one who is in misery. God, Jesus Christ's divine mercy, is literally giving his sacred heart to us, humanity, who is in misery. And we're in misery because we don't know what we're looking for. We're caught in the ache. Allow God's mercy, allow God's divine heart, his divine mercy, his sacred heart, show you and encounter what you're really looking for. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end, amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Colin. That was awesome. We're going to transition now into our small group discussion time. So if everyone could kind of just stay close to where you are, maybe circle up like in groups of 6 to 8 people or so. We'll try to keep them pretty small. We have about 20-25 minutes. So if you could circle up, and then a core team member with a paper of questions will come to your group. So you can stay with the same group you had last week, or you can mix and mingle or do whatever. Invite new people in. Have fun.
kids, they've given us like the heart of the truth. I mean, you know, you just said it when we were married. I actually had some close friends who are actually priests here in our life. And they, I mean, these guys are recently ordained. And I didn't know so well, just smiling, especially, you know, the church, especially out there around, you know, like certain people. And especially also in vocation or congregation, you know, how a heck of a job is to try to encourage maybe consider.
I thought it was really cool how he like used Jacob's concept of like being like how do I say this? Your like the way that like being a woman and marrying like the definition of like being manly and like giving yourself a special way to the world. It was just like you're fulfilling your vocation in being fully
I'm just really amazed that this
all right. At first it was a really long quote.
probably goes through what is the difference between being in love and love itself? And how is the deep quiet love actually better than being? I think that was something that was a lesson for me. This was all very new to me. And Stephanie and I started dating. And she was a total expert. That was amazing. But the idea behind it being that I wasn't coming from a place that was like dialogue that I came to this. This was something that they expected these things in their relationship and expected these things in their and I was still a lot of shit that God take away. Trying to find what it was that we were doing. And I think that was one of the things that I felt the idea that my husband and kind of trusting my future to actually start to find from that. And again, meeting love and responsibility is definitely sometimes over the phone, sometimes via FaceTime, was really eye-opening for me. I think that was a nice point that we touched on how we got in this chapter to talk about the difference between what that perceived love is and what that feeling is versus what that is. And Stephanie's a much deeper person than I am. I'm kind of like, I'm all about like just keeping it shallow. Just let's not deal with serious issues. She was like, you know, for the longest time, throughout our relationship, it's always said like, you don't even know me. Like, you need to know me. You need to like, you need to go through this with me and get to know my thoughts. And I was focused on like, well, what are the fun parts of a relationship that I like, and that I kind of thought would be without it. And through that, it has been difficult. Also, I think, obviously, like you said, So whereas something like that, something sentimental, like waking up and walking to the sunlight, something like that. Like to me, that's like, all right, that's great. But it means so much to her that all of a sudden starts to mean so much. So finding that value, I think, is really cool.
I think in the life and responsibility book, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he says, like, both in the previous chapter when he's talking about what's the physical, it's a word he uses, not sensible, sensuality. So there's sensuality and sentimentality. And I think he says, like, both of those things could be, like, launch pads into more noble love. But if they are not, if the emotions or like the physical attraction, you know, on either end aren't integrated into a more noble love, that's when they can veer off into these like idols, into these gods, and like living out of reality. And whereas those integrated into like a more like mature, noble love is actually like the normal path. So these aren't like inherently wrong, but when it's like you're attached to like this like broad, this like surge of emotional feelings that's not actually like carved out into reality, then I think that's like really, I don't know, does he say that or am I pulling this response? Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It does point at that and say that it almost in that chapter tends to say that it can give you away. It almost has like a negative connotation to it. Like that chapter kind of puts it in more of a negative, where it says that yes, your sentimentality can be distorted very easily. And it doesn't spend a lot of time talking about the good parts of it. Shouldn't be sentimental, which is not what it's saying. It's just saying be careful and be discerning because that actually here is nice. If I fall into such sentimental idealism